Great Britain's exit from the EU has been official for 4 years, and the country has been struggling with repeated crises ever since. And this also has an impact on the upcoming elections. Between rising costs of living, high inflation, a shortage of workers, regular strikes in many industries, and over-indebted households, Britain faces a whole host of problems in the year of its next general election. As Prime Minister Rishi Sunak highlights the many plans of his current government alongside announcing a planned election date for the second half of the year, the opposition is preparing to take over the country's political reins. While the governing Tories, still at the time from Boris Johnson, achieved a landslide victory with over 43% of the vote at the last election in 2019, the current election polls see the party in difficulties just over 4 years later. At the end of 21, the rival Labour Party had already overtaken the Conservative Tories in the polls for the first time in years. At the end of January, according to poll analysis by the newspaper Politico, the Tories were just 25% behind the 45% strong Labour Party. This may also be due to the fact that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is currently keeping a low profile about an election date, and at the beginning of the year, in addition to an announcement that elections would probably take place in the second half of the year, he pointed out his government's numerous plans: comprehensive tax cuts, programs against illegal migration, strengthening the British economy. The fact that it has been weakening in various areas for years is due not only to global crises but also to the British exit from the EU, which took place exactly 4 years ago on January 31st in 2020 and continues to bring new surprises for peoples and companies in the country. Transition periods and special permits have now applied to numerous areas which are now gradually ending. In an acute innovation that will come into force on Brexit anniversary, or came into force on Brexit anniversary in 2024 after numerous postponements, is the new control requirement for animal and plant imports, as well as animal foods at the border, which costs companies time and money and has led many delivery companies to reconsider exports to the island in the future. A new system for entering Great Britain is also expected to be introduced at the end of the year, which also promises more administrative work. Even after years, some of the changes that have been implemented so far have not really taken root. For years, the media has repeatedly reported on long queues of trucks at the border and interrupted supply chains. For these reasons, rising food prices are also closely linked to Brexit and its consequences. Many experts see this, and the surveys that show a majority of Britons are now critical of leaving the EU as one of the most important reasons why the Tories will most likely have to lose their parliamentary majority after years in government. However, while an early re-entry into the EU seems unlikely, even under Labour leader Keir Starmer, many are still hoping for new customs union negotiations that could resolve some administrative hurdles and problems for the time being. The fact that there is still no specific date for the elections is due to the electoral laws in the United Kingdom. The current rule is that Parliament must be dissolved on the 5th anniversary of the first session of the House of Commons. That would be the case on December 17th this year. And there is then a period of 25 working days during which elections must be held at the latest. The last possible day for the general elections would be January 28th in 2025. Great Britain wants to largely end the controls on trade between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom as well that were introduced after Brexit. As the British government announced on Wednesday, routine checks will no longer be carried out, and the vast majority of goods will no longer be checked. A corresponding change in law is to be adopted by the House of Commons in London on Thursday. The approach is the basis for the end of the political crisis in Northern Ireland. The main Protestant party, the Democratic Unionist Party, or DUP, which I always call Don't Understand Politics, had made an end to internal British customs controls a condition. And the DUP advocates political union with Great Britain and now wants to return to the regional government in Belfast after 2 years of boycott. The contractually agreed regulation stipulates that the DUP must govern together with the strongest Catholic force, Sinn Féin, which is seeking unification with Ireland. DUP leader Geoffrey Donaldson said all controls between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom would no longer apply. The Times newspaper, however, wrote that the agreement between the British government and the DUP was primarily symbolic. The EU Commission, which had agreed to the previous regulation after a long dispute with Great Britain, announced that it would closely examine the changes. These concern the so-called Windsor Agreement, which London and Brussels reached around a year ago to facilitate trade with Northern Ireland. The current customs border in the Irish Sea is intended to avoid a hard border between the former Civil War region of Northern Ireland and the EU member Ireland after Brexit. However, this also caused difficulties, for example, when sending parcels, medication and bringing pets from Great Britain to Northern Ireland. British loyalists feared that the controls would endanger the union with Great Britain. Northern Ireland was founded as a stronghold of pro-British Protestants, but demographics are changing with political consequences. Parliament has elected Sinn Féin politician Michelle O'Neill as head of government, and for the first time, the former Civil War region of Northern Ireland has a head of government who would like to unite the British territory with EU member Ireland. Michelle O'Neill from the Sinn Féin party took over as the new First Minister in Belfast on Saturday, the first Catholic in the 103-year history of the part of the country. Political commentators spoke of an earthquake, and Sinn Féin viewed the historic event as a step towards Irish reunification. In the decades-long Civil War, Catholics seeking union with Ireland fought against Protestants advocating political union with Great Britain. Thousands were killed, and the Good Friday Agreement ended the conflict in 1998. And this describes or prescribes a unity government between the two denominational camps. In her first speech, which she gave partly in Irish, O'Neill emphasized that she wanted to be a head of government for everyone. It must govern together with the DUP, which advocates political union with Great Britain, and the most important party in the Protestant camp is entitled to the equal position of deputy head of government in the finely balanced political system. Emma Little-Pengelly, a confidant of party leader Geoffrey Donaldson, was nominated for this. Despite our different views on the future constitutional state, the public rightly demands that we work together, deliver and work together, O'Neill said. In an interview with the British TV channel Sky News, however, she made it clear that she did not share the position of the British government, which sees a referendum on the unification issue as still decades away. She said her election shows that the situation on the Irish island is changing. O'Neill has deep roots in the Republican camp, and her father, Brendan Doris, was an activist in the terrorist organization IRA and was therefore in prison, and Sinn Féin was long considered the political arm of the IRA. With O'Neill taking office, the political crisis in Northern Ireland ended 2 years to the day after the previous government collapsed. Sinn Féin received the most votes for the first time in the following regional election in May 2022. However, the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, refused to cooperate. They ultimately called for an end to all customs controls between Northern Ireland and the rest of the United Kingdom, which the British central government and the EU had agreed on after Brexit. Just a few days ago, the DUP agreed to a new document after negotiations with London. Internal British controls should be reduced to a minimum. But as I said, experts call this agreement symbolic. The Belfast Telegraph newspaper commented that the DUP had missed its target and was selling its defeat as a victory. O'Neill's election is seen as a historic breakthrough for Irish nationalism. Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou MacDonald said a united Ireland was within reach, and the party is also ahead in polls in the Republic of Ireland. There, however, two liberal conservative parties in a coalition are preventing participation in the government. There has been great skepticism on the Northern Irish side so far. The Irish Times newspaper found at the end of 2023 that only 30% would be in favor of unification in a referendum, but 51% would be against it. And many fear financial consequences from a merger. In the Republic of Ireland, however, approval is almost 2/3. In principle, the Irish leadership is also striving for a merger. I believe there will be a united Ireland in my lifetime, is what Prime Minister or Taoiseach Leo Varadkar said in September. The demographics favor Republicans. For the first time, there are more Catholics living in Northern Ireland than Protestants, as a 2021 census has shown. The area was founded in the way it is nowadays in 1921 after the Irish Civil War expressly as a home for those who wanted to continue to be part of Great Britain, and the majority were Protestants. The Unionists, who see themselves as British, are now insisting on their position all the more intensely, as experts say. The aim of the previous regulation between Great Britain and the EU was to avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland after Brexit, and that in order not to stir up new conflicts. But the implementation sometimes led to shortages of food or medicines, and pets could no longer be taken on holiday to the UK. Loyalists feared that the controls would endanger their union. The British and Irish governments and almost all parties in Northern Ireland welcomed the DUP's return to unity government. But hardcore unionists criticized the fact that Northern Ireland continues to be dependent on the laws of the EU, whose internal market the region is de facto part of even after Brexit. They also criticized the enthronement of O'Neill, as they call it. We have a Sinn Féin head of government, but not in my name or that of thousands of other unionists, said traditional Unionist Voice Party leader Jim Allister. And if you want to know more, the next video is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.